anybody's got questions. My daughter Jessica here will come around and bring a mic to you so we can help you out, okay? Hopefully get you some right answers. With that, Representative Brent and Representative Weinstein are here to talk about what's going on at the State House today. I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Juanita Brent. I just happen to be a state representative for House District 12, which will soon be turned into House District 22, according to this map. And I've been serving in the State House for 4 years, and every General Assembly I've introduced at least one or more cannabis bills.
And I'm Casey Weinstein. I'm state representative for the 37th House District. So I live in Summit County, Northeast Summit County. That's generally the area. It's turning into the 34th District, which is more like Eastern, Middle, I don't know. It's different. I am in my second term. I came in with Representative Brent. We are office buddies. We are neighbors. In fact, she uses my office for all of her photo ops. So if you see that nice flag set up with the state of Ohio seal, that's my office that she comes in and takes her pictures in. Really happy to be here with you today, and I am one of the joint sponsors of HB 382, which is the first full legalization.
Dispensaries as well, even though we just did an expansion on dispensaries. So those are some of the things that are tied up inside of 261. If we can just get it to the House floor is what we're trying to do now. So what I'll do is ask the legislators if they each want to kind of elaborate where they think 261's at, where it may be headed, what's good in it, what's bad.
I'll start off first because I know my brother next to me will definitely have some good input too, but I want to make sure I put my input before he gives all the better answers. But Senate Bill 261 is really just expanding our program. Right now, we have plateaued with the amount of patients that we can actually bring into the medical cannabis program. And it's, for one, it's going to be expanding the amount of conditions, which is great, because honestly, at the end of the day, no matter how many cultivators or processors or dispensaries that we add to the market, if we're not adding more clients, patients to the market, it means nothing. We're always just going to plateau to how many is going to be here within the state of Ohio. So that is a big plus, because we need people not to feel like they're opening up more dispensaries and their bottom line is being cut. And so that's definitely a good point. I mean, obviously I want my brother from a different mother, his bill to pass for adult use, but this is a step. But also too, with the basic thing, a lot of this stuff is just political, and just to kind of be generous with information to you guys, because I'm gonna treat you guys like family. It's a lot of, I don't like that person, so I'm not gonna vote for this bill, so I'm gonna hold out my vote. And that's a lot of what's going on. You will find way more people who are pro-cannabis, but they're petty. And the pettiness is what's keeping our state in the stagnant position is in.
I think that's all very true by Representative Brent. But in general, I would say there is widespread support. I don't think I need to tell this audience, but just among Ohioans for legalization, and the legislature in general is out of step and behind like 10 to 15 years, I think, from where the public is right now. So there's a disconnect, the fundamental disconnect that we're dealing with. And also, there's leadership in the House side that is highly resistant to moving any expansion of the medical program or recreational or legalization or decriminalization bill forward. So it's got some challenges at the leadership level. I would say if it was allowed to come to the floor for a vote, it would probably pass. But we have some roadblocks that we have to get through, and we've also got a lame duck. Obviously, I think everybody knows this bill has to pass this by this December, because everything starts over again next General Assembly. So it's gotten a lot of momentum. We want to get it to the House floor, but there's a lot of bills that could be coming to the floor. I don't know, Rep. Brent, do you think we should expect a crazy lame duck this time? Yes. So what you can do is contact the members of this government oversight. Is that right? Okay, government oversight committee. I don't think Rep. Brent or I are on it. Okay, but if you contact those members and urge them to support, there's a great chance for it to, when they hear that, to move it forward. I do think it's a step in the right direction. I'm obviously for full legalization, but I would absolutely like to see our medical program expand. That's what's happening in neighboring states like Pennsylvania. They are taking those expansion steps, and we're losing out. People are losing out with access to care in Ohio fundamentally in the medical program. And as Rep. Brent said, we have to broaden the demand base. We have to open up more people and bring more people into the program to create a healthy balance in the overall industry and ensure continued growth. So a few things have to come together, but I'm highly supportive of the bill and would encourage you to focus your efforts on the members of the Government Oversight Committee to get that passed out as soon as we get back from after the election.
With that, Representative Weinstein brought something up when he's talking about going to the House Oversight Committee. Anything in the or down at the State House, Senate or Representative, just go to legislature.ohio.gov, and there are links there that you can go to everything. Okay, to find out, you can track bills, etc., see where they're at, see where you can participate, where you can communicate with, go in and talk to legislators like these. And I will give a shout out real quick. In Ohio, we elect what's called a state legislator. The problem I've seen is most legislators become district legislators. If you don't live within their district, or they're a constituent of their district, they usually sometimes won't talk to you. These are two true state legislators. They'll go anywhere in the state. I know Representative Brent personally has drove from one corner to the next corner. Representative Weinstein is all over the northern part. So these are two vital legislators to reach out to as we do, try to push this through. With that, and I'll probably tell you again, legislator.ohio.gov, to get you guys to get involved with the House and the Senate down there to get things done. What I'd like to go to now, we'll get to questions here in just a minute, I promise, okay? I just want to get some key points and stuff out here, what's going on. Representative Brent, I know it's 2 years now, autism, let's go there, House Bill 60. If you want to share what you've been doing with that.
Yeah. Thank you. So I introduced a bill, House Bill 60, is adding autism as anyone on the autism spectrum as a qualifying medical condition for medical cannabis. And this bill has been actually more than 2 years in the making. I introduced it in my freshman General Assembly, and it died. It didn't get a committee hearing at all. And this General Assembly is now a bipartisan bill with Representative Bill Sykes, who is the majority leader in Cincinnati. It got voted out of the House and is now in the Senate waiting to get pushed on. This bill is going to be a very interesting bill. As much as we are concerned about Senate Bill 261 that Tim just brought up, that is going to expand our medical cannabis program, do not be surprised if 261 gets added on as an amendment to House Bill 60, because we're going to learn about politics, and this is a game of politics. And things that have easily get passed out of the House, out of the Senate, might not so easily get passed out of the House. So we're trying to see how this all plays out in the bigger scheme of House Bill 60 and the existence of this bill. So the bill itself is like 2 lines, adding autism spectrum as a qualifying condition for medical cannabis. That's it. But I would not be surprised if Senate Bill 261 gets added on as an amendment to House Bill 60 in the near coming future.
Awesome. Keep that in mind. There are other ways to get something introduced at the State House. If one bill's not working, as Representative Brent just said, there are back avenues of doing things. So hopefully keep your fingers crossed. If we can push 60, I know we've been working with House Bill 60 a lot longer than 261, but if we've got to include them that way, that's the way we'll do it. And hopefully, with one thing with Senate Bill 261, as I said, we just added 73 new dispensaries in Ohio. Senate Bill 261 allows for another 167 on top of, we'll have 133 total. Allows up to 300 dispensaries in Ohio. Something drastically needed. The opportunities for cultivators is there. All they got to do is apply for it. It started last October. They want to expand. There's also expansion rights in 261. So we're trying to cover, as much as we can, add more conditions and so forth, and just make the program more patient-friendly. The infrastructure seems to be coming along very well, the license holders, with what they're permitted to do. But what we so often leave out is criminal justice reform, and that's where we include patient protection rights. We leave that out, and like I've always, as long as I've been doing this, I've always looked at the infrastructure. That is the supply. Plenty of supply. I know we hear a lot of people say there's no supply. What we don't have is consistency in profiles, supply. Other than that, there's flour and products available everywhere. It may not be what you want. The other side is the demand side. Those are the patients. But patients are not going to participate if they're not protected. You can't give me a medical card today and say, Tim, you're in the program, but when I go to work tomorrow, I get fired. I get an OVI on my way home, or I stop to pick up my child in a custody case, and they won't let me have my child. Or somebody tells me, well, you can't have a firearm and a medical cannabis card now. Well, the state's going to give me two options here, Tim. You can have a firearm permit, and you can have a card in the program, but you got to choose which one you want. It's kind of like, it just doesn't sound fair. Anyways, with that, rather than me ramble on, let's go back up here. Representative Weinstein, let's touch on adult use. That's something in Ohio that we need drastically. And I know there's a lot of good points and stuff that your bill's brought in, and there's some other things that we'll bring up here later. Hopefully we'll get some questions from some of the big national players that I recognize in here and so forth. We'll bring up those questions to us, and we'll be able to help, or they can answer them themselves. I'm pretty sure most of them already know. Looking at you. So go ahead, Rep. Weinstein, tell us about adult choice in Ohio, adult use, whatever you want to call it. It's recreational. It's a rhetoric term, basically calling adult choice to make it more pleasing to the sound.
Yeah, well, I first want to touch on the point you just brought up, which was the criminal justice reform side of it. There's the best numbers that we can get. There are 20,000 arrests in Ohio per year of nonviolent low-level marijuana for nonviolent low-level marijuana possession. I think that's a massive waste of resources, and it's frankly a taxing resource on police as well. So when you look at fundamentally keeping people out of prison who shouldn't be in prison and reducing the strain on our police forces, that's something that we can do, and just morally, from a freedom and liberty perspective, I think it's the right thing to do also. So there's just a tremendous savings that can be had, and it's really a win-win situation. But just expanding on that, yeah, I think having had a successful medical program that we're now, as we've just discussed, a bipartisan effort to expand, looking at expansions in our neighboring states, full legalization in that state up north. The time has come. There are 19 states that have fully decriminalized or legalized. More than half the states and the majority of Americans are living in programs, or in states with medical programs. We've reached a tipping point, and at this point, Ohio is generally not going to be the first, second, or third state to do something. But I'm making the case that we should be the 20th state to do this, right? And not lose out on vital economic development and growth, on revenues that can be driven into communities that host dispensaries, on a full regulatory regime that can keep the industry safe as it grows, that can expand care to medical patients from so many different conditions that can benefit from this, including my mom, who suffers from multiple sclerosis, which is one of the things that brought me into this issue so personally. It is time for us to take that step. And if you look at the issues out there that draw bipartisan support from Ohioans, there aren't that many that get 70% plus support. This is one of those issues, though, that for a lot of different reasons, a lot of different people support legalization, and I think it's a very important discussion at a minimum that we need to be having to drive our program forward and to broaden the demand base. It's what we've got to do as we expand dispensaries. We have to broaden the demand base. So I'm hopeful that this will help add to that momentum and contribute to the cause.
Just to add on to Representative Weinstein, as we look at where we are going to make a development here, and I'm based in the Cleveland area, we are developing a lot more public housing, and as we are looking at who's going to be living in those public housing, we want to make sure that long-term people who do live in public housing can be able to use medical cannabis. Right now, you could not utilize medical cannabis if you live in public housing. And so as we talk about people who are dealing with addiction, or we dealing with people who just have any of those medical qualifying conditions, they would not be able to utilize this at all. It's its own level of collateral sanctions of people being penalized for just, be able to utilize a plant. And so we really have to be very intentional about what restorative justice looks like on a state level as well as on the federal level. Because when we start talking about public housing, we are talking about on the federal level. But we have to make sure that people have access, and affordable housing is key. And if you're trying to live somewhere that's affordable but you can't use medical cannabis, that puts people in a very awkward situation to be able to want to be a part of this program but not be able to because of restrictive laws. And disproportionately, particularly here in Cleveland, not all over, we have a lot of Black and brown people who live in public housing. And so what are we saying to folks that people can make money off of medical cannabis, but then those who have been disproportionately affected in their communities cannot benefit from the same things that people are making money off of? And that is a real problem when we talk about what we're seeing. And, shout out to my colleague, Rep. Weinstein. He does let me use his office, that's for real. But just the intentionality of it, because this is a program that so many people are making money off of, but the communities that have been mostly affected by it are not receiving any type of benefits. We need to, put some skin in the game and say, like, hey, we see you. And that's what restorative justice does. It's like, we see you, we've seen what's happened historically in this, and now we need to make a change to rectify it.
Thank you. Okay, just legislature.ohio.gov. And the reason I say that, I'm sure you guys are probably aware of this, at the State House right now, there are actually 5 House bills and 3 Senate bills that address cannabis reform for the betterment of the program, some way or another. House Bill 356, Senate Bill 203, Senate Bill 288, Senate Bill 261, House Bill 382, House Bill 498, House Bill 628, House Bill 210, and House Bill 60. So this gives you an idea with that much action going on at the State House involving cannabis, whether it's something criminal. I think it's 356, you may know, is asking for, and when I'm on this topic of decriminalization, Brian right here is with Sensible Decrim and some others, spearheaded the thing in the city of Cleveland to get change some decrim laws there. The reason I'm bringing up decrim and Brian at this point is, I think, as I said, 356 actually goes up to 1,000 grams for a misdemeanor possession charge. These guys run and push through municipalities and get 199 grams decrim. This here's allowed. The problem with it is, though, you go straight from an M1, you jump right into a felony 4. We bypass a felony 5. The issue with that is, should you get charged with a felony 4 for possession of cannabis, you're stuck with that felony 4. If you get charged with a felony 5 with possession of cannabis, that can actually be plea bargained down to the misdemeanor. For the mere fact of going up to 1,000 from 199 up to 999, that's some of the stuff that we're working on that we need people to get involved with, to reach out to these legislators like this, to reach out even to the ones that aren't against it. Stay on both sides of the aisle. And the other side of the aisle was invited to be here today too as well. But we have what we have. We have supporters of it and so forth. We all want to work together down there in a collaborative effort, a bipartisan effort to get things done. So off of that, I would also like to go to a question often asked, and I know everybody's waiting to ask, I'm going to ask it for you. Personal cultivation, otherwise known as home grow rights. In Ohio, from my experience, I don't see it happening in the medical program. And I know Representative Weinstein will talk on it here real quick. It is in the House, or in the adult choice bills that are down there, personal cultivation. Something I would like you to think about is this, and I've talked lately with Representative Weinstein on the Hobby Day about as far as plant counts. The problem that I see with the plant count is, who's going to regulate that? Why do I have to give up my Fourth Amendment right to let some state official come in and guarantee that I only have 4 plants? What's their knowledge to know that I only have 4 plants, and is a clone legal or illegal? So if I'm going to have cultivation, personal cultivation rights, I don't need somebody coming into my home. If I make a mistake and I have 50 pounds that I grew inside my basement and I go out on the street, that's on me. Don't blame everybody else. And I think that's something that is very important, that needs to be thought of as we do this. Another one, I'm going to go there real quick with this one too, is the taxes. And we'll get some input from Harry, maybe from Dave later on that and so forth, your other question or whatever. For some reason, the cannabis industry in the United States, we feel it is our responsibility to, even though we've been discriminated against, mass incarcerated against, racial prejudice issues against us and so forth for 85 years. And Representative Weinstein talked about some of the criminal justice stuff. Why do we continue now through financially through taxes have to pay for the problems that alcohol's caused, the problems that big pharma's caused, the problems that communities themselves have caused? These aren't cannabis problems. So why do we have to be overtaxed if we continue on the path we're on? And I think you're probably aware of it here is Congressman Schumer has a bill introduced now that says above the, if you all don't know, we do pay taxes in Ohio and it's approaching 20%. So if Schumer gets his way, he's talking about a 15% introductory up to 25%. So you could be in the future going into a dispensary and for every $100 you spend, you got to spend $50 in taxes. And it's going to go to, hopefully we can keep it within our cannabis community for social equity issues and things of that nature, helping businesses get started and so forth, and do our own educational programs. But why do we have to send it outside? There's a question on that. So off of taxes and the plant council, both of you can say something on that, please.
I feel like this is very vital. Just to give people a little background about me, I did 14 years in 4-H as a kid. So being in the space of agriculture, you understand the importance of being able to grow things at home. There is a necessity to be able to grow produce and to be able to grow and maybe possibly sell. There's a pathway for people to do that right now when it comes to growing things at home. The same way that we have a pathway for people to grow produce at home and have our traditional farmers market, and there's a pathway for you to say, hey, you have to fill out this certificate, go through this program to be able to sell it in a market. We need that the same way where people can be able to have it at home and understand the rules, that people have to almost sign some type of waiver saying like, hey, I'm gonna grow this at home on these standards, and this is what I'm agreeing to, and kind of go from there. We don't have the manpower to even have enough inspectors for our hemp program. We don't have enough inspectors for our poultry program and our, just the different programs we have within the Department of Agriculture already. So talking about adding any type of additional inspectors or people trying to regulate home grow is not realistic within the state of Ohio because we just don't have the manpower at all. I think it's kind of criminalizing people when they haven't committed a crime. It's like you're looking for a problem that's not there. We don't even put that much effort for people who are out here trying to grow, produce that they grew in their urban garden at home. We're not asking people about where they get their seeds from. Are they certified seeds? Did you use fertilizer? I mean, we're not asking all those questions for people at the farmer's market, which can do a lot more harm off the food that you're consuming than the cannabis that you want to grow at your home. So people just kind of think about that when you think about the comparison of what we're happening at our farmer's market and where people are growing and what's happening with that. When people think about home grow, it's not happening with produce. Why would we want to do that with cannabis?
I'll speak specifically to the excise tax piece, because there is a 10% excise tax in HB 382. But Tim, to your point, we did specify that the funds go directly back into the communities that are hosting dispensaries. So if the community, like the town I live in, has basically shut out medical marijuana dispensaries. So, that would be an economic choice. It would just be it'd become an economic choice. Whereas cities like Akron, cities like Cleveland, and many others that are embracing the industry would receive the revenues, and they would specifically go to schools and community programs to hopefully lift those communities that have been disproportionately targeted. So, that said, we modeled the legislation off of best practices we felt that had passed and had led to successful programs nationwide, a little bit of Michigan, a little bit of Washington. But ultimately it's up for, that's why I show up to all these events, is to hear from from folks, and it's about making the bill better through the process. So I always appreciate the feedback.
You always do well with that, and I do appreciate 382. 382 does address some of that stuff. It tries to keep it home. And Representative Weinstein and I have talked, I believe, on this type of an issue of, as I said, if we're going to tax the cannabis community, let's kind of keep it in the cannabis community, or keep it in the community that needs the help. And nothing against opiate addiction, believe me, I've been there enough on that. But let Big Pharma take care of that. If you got an alcohol problem, let Big Alcohol take care of that. Why do we have to be responsible? You've punished us enough. So I'm going to throw out a few things here, and then we'll kind of go to a Q&A as we're getting close on our time. And I know the three of us could probably go for this for both days, but all day long. But a few things, and not to put you guys on the spot or anything like that, but I have been known to ask questions that are sometimes difficult to answer, but I always try to have the solution as well. I don't like to ask something that I don't know the answer to. And I've learned that through people like this going to the State House. When you go to talk to them, Representative Brent and I met a couple weeks ago, I believe it was, and I've got the solution for what I want done. So that's what they want to see. They don't want to hear you come in and ask a question and say, well, I want to see this. Well, and then I say, okay, well, John, what are you going to do about it? Well, I don't know. That's why I'm here to see a legislator. They need help too. So we're going to go on. One thing I'll throw out. These are food. This is food for thought. Then we're going to hit the questions. In Ohio, as far as scheduling cannabis, cannabis is scheduled out of 5 scheduled under the Controlled Substance Act. It's scheduled on 4 of them in Ohio. So what are you being arrested for? What's your car being searched for? Which schedule? Schedule 1, illicit cannabis. Schedule 2 in the program. Schedule 3, Big Pharma Marinol. Schedule 5, GW Pharmaceutical, Sativex and Epidiolex. There's also hemp. And as Representative Brent, I'll let her share her story. She wants on that later. Of telling me, I left the facility and I smelled like weed. So is she susceptible to being searched under probable cause? Yes. So that's one of the things that we're looking at now. Here's what a concern that I've always had for myself is, has the cannabis industry on a national level, through political pressure, have we addressed legalization or the end of prohibition law? We've been forced to go to it through medical. And that's what you always see is a medical program, and after that typically follows an adult choice program. So the question to ask, the answer I have yet to receive is cannabis medical, or is it adult choice recreational? So we've kind of trapped ourselves, but not because we weren't aware of it, but because this is how we were pressured to play the game. So that's one of the things I want to throw at you. As you're all aware, there's still the MORE Act, the Cole Memo, Safe Banking, and I think it's the Cannabis Opportunity Investment Act, I believe is one. Also, there's big topics right now as we see large states that have been legal for a while as far as lab shopping. We got some states, I think they got more testing labs than they got cultivators. So that brings up the topic of, do we go with a free market industry, or do we have a regulated capped industry? Which one's going to work? Perhaps we should work them together. We want people of all economic aspects to be able to get involved in this and stuff. So with that, real quick, I'll get some feedback from you guys, and then have my assistant over here. If anybody's got questions, we'll get you in. When you ask your question, please stand up. If she don't get to you, go ahead and speak loud. I know you guys got voices, but if you guys have any thoughts on some of that stuff I threw out.
Just as a person, shout out to Buckeye Really for letting me come on their harvest day. I literally was smelling like cannabis for 3 days, and somebody probably would ask. My partner was like, "Did you take a shower?" He kept on asking that, and I was like, "I took a shower." He was like, "You should take a shower again because you keep on smelling like cannabis." So 3 days later, I was still smelling like it. I went to events. I went to a school to go speak to a bunch of school children, and one of y'all lovely children knew what that smell was. I came in the classroom. So did the teachers. I was showing the pictures to the principal because she was wondering why am I here smelling like that. But it gets to the point of what Tip was saying is that when that is going on, that could, I'm a black woman in America, so I'm very susceptible of being stopped and being arrested. And regardless of my title or not, when people see me, most people don't know who I am. They just see this black woman that's out here, and I go to a lot of different cannabis spaces, and even if I'm not consuming, you're around something enough, you're smelling like it. And so how do we encourage people to get into this workspace? How do we encourage people to be educated? If there is this institutional racism that we have, that certain people, particularly people of color, are more susceptible to be arrested just because you're in a space. And we have to protect people as we are trying to grow this market going forward. I almost feel like I needed a card to walk around with me because I went to a school to go speak. I went and spoke at a State of the City address. I went and spoke, down in Columbus or a committee hearing, all within this short time period, and everyone said they smelled the same thing. I needed a whole card to explain what happened. And so we kind of laugh about it in this space, but what about the everyday person, where this is their job every day? That same job that they use to take care of their family, the same job that's helping make sure they can pay their car note on time. We have to come up with a system that cannot be a reason why officers are stopping people just completely. And so there has to be a better system to deal with that and to make sure that people feel seen. And there has to be a better mechanism when it comes to just people just being in this space. I know this is a little off topic and tend to not bring this up, but even just having micro, businesses, being able to grow one strand here within the state of Ohio so it can be even more accessible cost-wise for people who want to get into the space of cannabis. This has to be accessible, and whatever type of way we want to drive this, it comes to me personally, and I don't know everything, so I rely a lot upon you guys, but it comes down to the bottom line of cost and what are patients willing to pay. Once we get to the point of anything that we're doing that patients are not willing to pay it, and people are saying like that's just too expensive, or then it's not worth whatever we're trying to do within the system. So that's how we need your feedback. The great thing about working with Weinstein, and I'll say this for both of us, we don't act like we know everything. We keep coming in to you, and that's why you guys keep seeing us, because we don't know everything. But I do believe that we are living in a state that if patients do not want to pay whatever the cost is, then it's not worth whatever we're doing right now. So I think, as you were talking before, it just really comes down to what patients are willing to pay.
I don't have anything to add. That was awesome.
And I'll just say this too, where my first excitement about even coming to the cannabis space, I think I told Tim and Wendy, his wife, she's sitting here somewhere, but hi Wendy. I went to Japan probably like 15 years ago, and when I was taking a boat ride one evening, I saw the guys kind of like giving this whole tour on the water, and I see these plants sitting on rafts, and I told the guy, why are there plants sitting on rafts? He said, it's hemp. And he said, we use these as natural ways to filter our water here. And so I was like, man, like being a kid who grew up, owning a farm, I was like, that is the coolest thing in the world. I came back home like so excited to find out how can I use some hemp to help my land. I was like, man, we got some bad land up here in Cleveland. We got bad minerals. How can we do that? But it wasn't even legalized. It wasn't legalized until 2019. You know how crazy that was? 15 years later. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but I'm just saying, it was a while ago. And so as we are still expanding stuff, we are missing out so much of our potential of our economic, our job market, our education system as a state for not expanding hemp as well as cannabis. It's a shame that here in the state of Ohio that you could not own a hemp and cannabis license at the same time. That don't make no sense. What does one have to do with the other one? And so we really have to really just start pushing these gamuts on how antiquated Ohio is as a whole. Casey and I both just came from the White House. Literally just got off a plane. I just got off the plane at 11. You just got in last night from the White House. Talking to other people from other states, that Ohio is really antiquated with how we think. Just talk to these people in Arkansas, which is considered as a red state. They allow you to have a hemp and cannabis license. I met people who own a cannabis and a hemp facility at the same time. They making money off of both ends. And we still struggling just to let people just be in one market and not allowing them to have enough inspectors in another market too. We have to do better. And I'm about to say something because I know Tim, I'm on a little rant. And every time I come back from DC, I always feel like I'm on a little rant. We need you guys to get in these spaces where us elected officials are. Congressional Black Caucus was this week. There was nobody there representing the cannabis space. Thousands upon thousands of Black elected officials in one place at one time, people meeting up with the president, people meeting up with different, secretaries of different departments. There's no representation from the cannabis space. A missed opportunity for us in this. Such a missed opportunity. There's another conference that's coming up for the NBCSL, National Black State Legislators Conference. That's going to be in Las Vegas. I'm hoping we're going to have some representation for cannabis there. There's a league of cities where you have city council people and mayors that come to that. That's actually going to be here in Columbus. Let's not miss these opportunities to really push the importance of being pro-cannabis here at all these different levels of government in these different spaces. And so that's why I'm bringing this up, because there's always, for all these different events, there's always a place for vendors to come, and there's always an opportunity to offer sessions. We're still offering up sessions. I also said, as many of my many hats, I sit as the president of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus. It's the oldest Black caucus in the nation. So when we have these national conferences that brings in all 50 states of all these different legislators, there's always times for people to bring in sessions. So, ding, 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 if you guys want to do a session, let me know. We can guys kind of have you sit on that national stage for all of us legislators where we go. There's also the National Conference of State Legislators, NCSL, that both of us attend. They bring all the state legislators from all over the nation to attend those type of things. We don't see cannabis people there. Did you see anybody from cannabis space? No. You get people from all over the world. But we don't see that here. We are gonna really have to change our mindset on what that looks like, on how we really push the needle. Because we gotta go where the people who are making changes are, and that's these big conferences. And if people can see that it's showing up in these conference spaces, that might be the key to say, this is something that us as legislators, Congress people, state reps, city council people, county executive, commissioners really need to be thinking about it. If these conferences that we are going to expand our knowledge base are exposing us to.
Okay, let's go with this. I'm going to start right over here. You had his hand up, then we're going to come over to Harry and we'll get you guys in. Real quick, try to focus your questions towards them. You've got the attention of two legislators right now. If you've got questions for me, let's ask about it on the floor or something. I'm here for 2 days. And pretty much everybody knows how to get a hold of me and so forth. But you have their attention, and I'm not going to interrupt them once they get on a talk, so I'm going to let them go. But with that, try to, again, and kind of to help you out a little bit, legislature.ohio.gov. Reach out to your legislators, reach out to your local politicians and say, hey, where can we get involved at? What's coming up? What committees? What associates? All of that stuff. With that, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Just want to say thank you to both of you for what you do for Ohio. And I'm an enthusiastic constituent of yours, Casey. So thank you. I need some betting advice. Do I place a bet that we will be voting on the initiative that's been put off until 2023, or will history repeat itself and a failed initiative back in 2015 essentially ended up kicking the legislature in the pants, and we ended up with the Ohio Medical Marijuana Control Program? So will the legislature, controlled by the American fascist, the Republican Party, get its act together, or will we be voting on an initiative?
So, I'll go back to what I said earlier, that the House today is very much out of step with where Ohioans are, and that is focused on the House leadership right now. So, we have my bill with Representative Upchurch, HB 382. We have a lot of great work that Representative Brent's doing, bipartisan work. There's a Republican bill that is pretty similar to mine, to Republicans. So there's bipartisan efforts. Tim already mentioned multiple bills in both houses moving, but there's a ceiling right now in terms of leadership in both the Senate and the House and what we're going to do in terms of full legalization. I definitely think we could see some incremental expansions of medical. I don't think you're going to see a legalization bill work its way through the legislative process. I think the fastest, most effective way to do that is through a vote of the public. But the only thing, and I would, an initiative about, yes, initiate statute. So I think, based on what I know about the effort behind the ballot initiative, that it seems like they're going about it the right way. They're framing it in a way that is much more palpable and gets to much broader support. But also, since 2015, so much has changed in terms of the public's perception. I mean, truly, I've always been interested in the issue. I went to Rotary in 2015 when I was running for Hudson City Council, and they asked about marijuana, and I said I was supportive, and there were gasps in the room. I think I lost a lot of votes that day, but we've come a long way. I mean, everywhere, to the point where I am sure this would pass if it was, not constructed in a really negligent way. The concerns I hear from industry are that it could be structured in a way that's exclusive, like the 2015 initiative was, or that it freezes some people out, or it actually makes it more difficult for the businesses that have been in the industry that have gotten us to where we're at today. So it needs to be framed and put forward correctly. My understanding is it is, and it has been. I think there is absolutely the energy, will, and the votes for it to pass. So if you were betting, I would say the statute, the initiative, is going to be what gets us to full legalization.
Thank you.
I think it should have been some more public pressure with this, to have all those petitions signed and people to use their efforts to be all across the state of Ohio, and not to put the pressure for us to do something now. We literally have been on recess for 5 months. This is the longest we've ever been on recess. We're full-time state house. Doesn't mean we work year-round, even during election season. We are normally, the General Assembly is normally in session. They are taking break on purpose so you can forget. They're taking break on purpose so you can be busy doing other things, and so people can say like, oh, we don't have enough time to address these issues. We literally are going to have like 3 weeks left when we come back after election season, because you guys aren't putting the pressure. No one's busting a grape to contact us to say, we want you guys to handle this initiative going on right now. And it's been going on in circles. There's barely any type of conversation. I know I sit on like this little small ad hoc committee that's supposed to be addressing it. They have not called us to have a committee hearing regarding the ballot initiative at all, for us to be able to vote it out, for that to happen. And for the intentionality to bring it on a municipal year when less people are likely to vote in 2023, what's really going to be on the ballot on 2023? We should have been forcing it to happen on this election cycle when we know people are going to be coming out to vote for the governor, the U.S. senator. These bigger races is all by design. So when we do not push it, things will not happen. Stop looking at these elected officials, and I include us, as your friends. We are not your friends. We're not. So if you want to get some things done, you're going to have to push it. You really going to have to push it. And you got to publicly shame people. I tell people this all the time. You got to publicly shame people. Use what you have to get what you need to have. You guys have a lot more power. You got to work like a fist and not a bunch of fingers. There's a lot of finger action going on. People trying to do these one-offs all by themselves. You're going to have to really put some pressure, start shaming people, because we are not doing our job as state General Assembly members right now. And you guys are allowing it. You keep on re-electing people who are very problematic, who are not getting things done when it comes to cannabis. This is too long for us to still be talking about the same topic. And I'm saying that strongly to you guys because you guys are not showing up. You're not sending enough letters. You're not putting the pressure. It is $17 to get on the Greyhound from Cleveland to Columbus. Trust me, I get on the Greyhound sometimes myself. We need you to show up. We need you to kind of almost harass us. Now Rep. Weinstein and I, we are the ones fighting with you, not against you. But we got some problematic colleagues on both sides of the aisle. My bill, House Bill 60, and I'm gonna stop my rant, bipartisan bill, not all Democrats voted for it, not all Republicans voted for it. Y'all didn't even bust no grapes about that. Some of y'all here in this room was helping these people that were against my bill come back to office. I seen y'all campaign for them, okay? Thank you.
All right, I got the mic here real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. We're on a time restraint. So I'm going to get Brian's question in, then we're going to get Harry's in. I don't want to cut the next panel that's coming on besides that. I saw Lenny a minute ago, but he might kick me in the shin or something if I try to take somebody else's time. So please respect the legislators when they come off the stage. They've both been traveling. They've been busy. If you got questions and stuff, try to email them, give them a phone call, their office or something. They got some great aides and so forth like that. But try to respect their time while they're here. If they take a floor or a tour of the floor and so forth, and then we also have down room 2 immediately. If you guys have time for it. But let's go ahead. Brian, go ahead.
All right, my name is Brian Adams, founder of Sensible Cleveland, and been pushing since 2013. So some of us actually have been here pushing and talking and having the meetings, and still to no avail. I'm not saying that what you just said, Rep, wasn't valid. However, the educational piece, I think, is essential to everything before we even start pushing. A lot of these folks like to remain in ignorance, and there's been several studies and several incidents of changes in demographics and quality of living when we talk about medical patients that are indicative of the prominence of cannabis, the promises of cannabis that we can see throughout all the other states in this laboratory of democracy. There's a couple of things. We went through the proper channels. We went and got the signatures. We went and presented it. There's a man holding this up, and we've done everything that we needed to do on the end of making an actual ballot. So that wasn't our issue of getting it pushed to 2023 if we did the proper things to be in this election cycle. So I just want to say that there were a lot of folks trying to make it happen this year, and we got sidelined basically. My real question, though, is when we talk about expansion and adding more dispensaries and making this program palatable for a lot of other folks, let's talk about the not in my backyard people. What are we going to do about those people? Because there are several municipalities where folks have to travel very far right now, and even when we add more dispensaries, we're at them in almost the same zones, more or less, to get their medication. And what are we going to do about the education of those municipalities that say they don't want dispensaries, even though it could be helping grandma out the street?
Get rid of them. You got money, run somebody against them. And it sounds very simple. We are all elected. Like literally, I was the top go-getter in the state of Ohio. Most people in their races were getting 2,000-3,000 people in their race. I ran on a pro-cannabis. I had 8,000 people that voted for me in my race. Top go-getter in the state. Woo! If you tired of what people are doing, you got to just talk straight. I'm serious. You got to get rid of them. Get some money, run a candidate, and get rid of them. Get rid of all those city council people. Get rid of that problematic mayor, and run somebody against them now. Don't think about it. Don't try to figure out how you can work around them. Most of them are back up on the ballot next year. Find you somebody now. Just needs to be somebody that's pro-cannabis. Just make it very simple. Are you pro-cannabis? We're going to run you for the city council race. Are you pro-cannabis? We're going to run you for the state rep race. Start running your own people. Stop asking and looking for elected officials who conform to what you need, because they're showing you they're not going to change. Get some money and run some candidates.
And I'll just add for HB 382, we tried to incentivize communities by directing that the funds that generated would go directly back into those communities that host dispensaries. So there's an economic hit ultimately that those councils and those local governments are going to be taking if they shut an industry, a growing industry that brings revenues directly back into the schools and to other vital parts of the community. So there's a price to pay, literally. But I also agree with Rep. Brent. Get somebody under 45 to run for those races.
I'll try to in Chillicothe, but it's a long way for me. Businesses, what's going on at the federal level, but also how it interacts with states. And I was just in Washington, and it kind of go to something Representative Brent said earlier. we were meeting with the staffers and legislators. The doors were shut. This would have been passed 5 years ago. Legalization, regulation, or end of prohibition, because I don't call it legalization at the federal level. Any prohibition and regulating at the federal level, but everybody's performing for the Karens. First of all, what's worse for the community, dispensaries or ice fishing? That's what I'd like to know. So it's a local Northeast Ohio story. Anyway, I come from a beer and wine background. We were in beer and wine distributorship for years, and when our industry came under attack in the 80s because people were saying we were killing people on the roads, we went to Columbus. We were in every district at the time. We had a distributor in every district in the state and every district in the United States, and we worked our tails off to protect our industry. That, and Representative Brent mentioned it, there's too many fingers. One thing I would suggest, and I would ask, has it been attempted, is to reach out to other industries and get them involved, because coming from that alcohol beverage background, they're going to take a hit. If they could get involved and get a piece of the pie and say, okay, you know, we've got room for you at the table, as opposed to we're going to give our existing license holders all the cannabis permits. There's no reason for them to, I shouldn't say that. There's other reasons. There's equity, there's morality, but there's no business reason for them to support you. And I would suggest that they're probably open to that, whether it be whatever. You make an exclusion. If, you know, they've been good business people for decades and decades. Shouldn't they have a shot at that license? So whatever it may be. Again, the question is, has that been attempted to build a greater coalition than just the people you have here in the industry? Because that's what's going to force, yes, we can vote some of those people out, but if a guy's got 5 mom-and-pop grocery stores in Chillicothe, Ohio, and he can get a cannabis permit because he's got a state liquor permit in his store, then he's going to go to bat with you with the Ohio Grocers Association or the Restaurant Association or the Tavern Association. And now you're talking big money with big pull in Columbus, and that's how things are getting. I tend to agree that it's going to be this legislative initiative, but my concern is, what are the powers that be in Columbus going to do to undermine that? Because we've seen it in South Dakota, we've seen it in Mississippi, that the new strategy is to keep it off the ballot, but if it gets approved, to sue our own voters for it. So what do you think the governor would take that shot if he's still governor and this thing goes on the ballot in 2023 to invalidate it?
So if I understand the first part of your question right, it's should we be courting big business, you know, or
other industries, because they're small businessmen too involved.
I'm honestly a little hesitant on that, because to me that feels a little reminiscent of the 2015 effort. It was exclusionary. It created what I don't want to see in legalization is like a faster ramp in for some and not for others, right? I want the most open, equitable way with the existing industry that got us to where we are here now today at the table too, to make sure that we have as many on-ramps as possible.
I'm not talking about excluding them. I'm just saying let's create a bigger pie for everybody, because you're going to, I'm talking about the legislative initiative. It's going to give a certain amount of permits to existing license holders, correct? And it would, until 3 years from now, nobody else has an opportunity to get in the business. Is that true? That's the way I read the legislative initiative.
No, that's not all necessarily true. But let's do this. I don't want to take away from the next panel, okay? And not to cut them short, but the next panel coming up, this is the first time in Ohio that you've seen this group of bosses, gentlemen, ladies, and so forth. We're going to go ahead and get off the stage, and I'm sure we run over our time. But please, as I said, respect the legislature.